All right. Without further ado, the panel will be composed with the first, we will have our panelists share some of their career journey and perspectives, and then we'll have a few prepared questions, and then we'll open up for the audience questions. And first, I want to invite Stephen Ramage, the CEO, former CEO of the group of Earth Observation, and I'm not sure if I can pronounce your current consulting company correctly. So Stephen, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Let you introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you for that. The current company is called Réseau. It's a French name, but it's pretty easy to pronounce. I'm Scottish, so if I can pronounce it, anyone can pronounce it. Hi everyone. My name is Stephen Ramage. I'll give you a little bit of background on my education, and then I'll talk a little bit about my work. My first degree, which was eons ago, was French, German, Russian, and Spanish. And then I switched to information systems, which would be computer science today. I then did a postgrad in European policy and communications. And I worked in the private sector for the first 15 years of my career. And then I switched into the international arena, notably around environmental and humanitarian, as well as international development topics. As an example, I was a product manager of a software development company in 2001, working on spatial databases. And then in 2003, I bought the company with 4 other colleagues. In 2010, I moved on to join a global standards development organization. And then after that, I worked for the British government in a fairly senior international role. I've probably interviewed several hundred people, and I've seen 10 times as many CVs. And I've managed around 150 people over the course of my career. And remember, managing people is a broad process. It's managing up, it's managing sideways, and it's managing down. So I've quite a lot of experience in that area. Around 2010, I decided to focus more on business value of geospatial data, and then laterally on the science policy interface. There's a big gap in what I describe as the technology translation space. So I've been working there since 2016 when I joined the group on Earth observations based in Geneva, and I'm still in Geneva now. This role involved leading the science policy interface team and the communications team. We worked a great deal with the Committee on Earth Observation Satellites. That's about 60 agencies, including ESA, JAXA, NOAA, NASA, and many others. We also work with the World Meteorological Organization and other UN agencies, particularly UNCBD, UNCCD, UNDRR, UNFCCC, and the UN Science Policy Business Forum. And I can explain any and all of the acronyms if required. Today, I run an advisory service firm that does 3 things. First of all, we work with small companies in the nature and climate space using earth science data tools and services, so mainly earth observations and remote sensing. I work with chief execs on implementing their business strategy, including sales growth and organizational product development. Secondly, we work with international organizations such as GIZ, the German Development Agency, the UN Environment Programme, and NASA. In these cases, we're working on topics such as land degradation and the Sustainable Development Goals, such as SDG 15, as well as a global sand observatory and the triple planetary crisis. I'm not sure if you know, but after water, sand is the second most used natural resource on the planet. Finally, I'm the facilitator for a growing group of Réseau associates, and these are women practitioners, geospatial practitioners from the Global South. So this group emerged from mentoring I've been doing over the last few years. It's now in excess of 200 young women and a few young men. So just to repeat, the name of the company is Réseau, which translates from French to English as network. And essentially, I spend a lot of my time connecting people. This means investing time in various social media channels and meeting people around the world, online and in person. And I'm a big fan of paying it forward, which basically means trying to help others, whom I know in turn will pass on the support to people who need it. I helped to set up, and I'm on the governing boards of Digital Earth Africa. I think you heard from someone this morning, and Digital Earth Pacific. I was a fellow at the Urban Big Data Centre at University of Glasgow in Scotland, a visiting lecturer at the Institute for Environmental Sustainability at the University of Geneva, and I'm currently a visiting professor at the Institute for Future Cities at the University of Strathclyde, also in Glasgow, Scotland. You could kind of think of that a bit like an MIT for the UK. And finally, I've been a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society for more than a decade. So you could say that geography plays a fairly substantial role in my career. So that's me for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. That's very impressive, and how you're building the networks, connecting people, and we'll have some questions for you later on. And Yaítza, do you want to go next? I know you have a few slides you want to share during your opening remarks.
Yep. Absolutely. Let me go ahead and share. Can you confirm that you see the slides?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. It's story time. I call it Unexpected Careers in Earth Sciences. How did I get to work at NASA? I'm Dr. Yaítza Luna-Cruz. I was born and raised in a small town in Puerto Rico, coming from a very humble Latino family with limited resources. I started to learn at very young age the value of hard work and sacrifices. From my family, I learned that whatever you believe, you become, but you're not just a dreamer. You are a creator. You need action, and sometimes you need to be brave enough to create your own opportunities. And here's why. I started my educational journey at the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez, in which I earned a bachelor's degree in theoretical physics. Back then, there was no atmospheric science and meteorology program in Puerto Rico. I saw the need, the potential, and the interest in the field, so I decided to create and be the first president of the American Meteorological Society student chapter in the whole Caribbean. As I said, sometimes you need to create your own opportunities for you and for others. After 2 years, I earned a master's degree in physics, but I also completed the later established atmospheric science and meteorology program. That opened the door to move to Washington, D.C., to earn a doctorate degree in atmospheric physics at Howard University, sponsored by the NOAA Center for Atmospheric Science. From installing radiometers in Africa to measure solar radiation and the effects of Saharan dust on weather, launching radio sondes on the Caribbean to measure meteorological parameters that help us understand how greenhouse gases affects weather and climate, flying over the agricultural fields of Southern California to flying inside a Category 4 hurricane. Yes, you hear right. I have been one of the few Latinas on board NASA field campaigns to understand how hurricanes form and intensify. My PhD experience at Howard University was extraordinary. When I defended my dissertation, I was ready to conquer the world. But wait, the day that I defend my PhD, the government shut down and I lost my postdoc funds. I was forced to join the line of let's find a job as soon as possible. And just like that, welcome to season 1 of Unexpected Careers in Earth Science. It took me a while. And to my surprise, and to be completely honest, I didn't even know it was an option. I joined the Department of Defense, the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, for a surprising and amazing career as a subject matter expert in chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive, atmospheric transfer and dispersion, that's a lot, and natural hazards such as hurricanes, flooding, volcanoes, earthquakes. Yes, They need atmospheric science and meteorologists to support 24/7 operations for federal and international agencies. But none of this was easy. It was hard to navigate the defense environment as a young Latina female doctor. Being a woman in defense was very challenging. Just look at that image, a perfect example of some alarming statistics. In the United States, in atmospheric science, only 5% are Hispanic or Latino. From that, the percentage of women with a doctorate degree in the field is even lower. It's about 1.2%. This is one of the reasons why I'm a big advocate for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in STEM. After 5 years in defense, looking to expand my radius of knowledge and experience, it was time for season 2 of Unexpected Careers in Earth Sciences. I completely shift and risk my career to join the private sector, working as a product and project manager for a climate analytics company in New York City. Almost 2 years and a half from that season, guess what? In 2020, there was a release of a special episode. Let's combine a startup company with COVID-19. I lost my job due to the pandemic. I was completely shocked living in New York City, the US COVID epicenter. The struggle was real, but during some of the darkest times in my life, my vision pulled me forward. My vision helped me to stay focused, a vision of doing science with purpose, a purpose of helping others to do the same. I never quit. My purpose was bigger than my circumstances. I turned adversity into opportunities. I put all my energy and efforts to give back to my community through volunteer work and consulting work. After a few months, the season finale was finally announced. A little more than 2 years ago, I joined NASA, and today I'm one of the few Latinas leading programs at headquarters. At NASA, I have the blessing to work with different initiatives across the Science Mission Directory, like the Open Source Science Initiative, to build an inclusive, open, transparent, and collaborative scientific community, and the experience of leading activities to understand NASA's role on addressing environmental and climate justice. I'm also leading the Early Career Research Program at the Earth Science Division, creating new opportunities for early career students and professionals. I'm extremely grateful to work with an amazing team that is really trying to make a difference in creating a more diverse and inclusive scientific workforce. Key takeaway here: surprises are going to come. Prepare yourself to expect the unexpected and embrace your journey. Create a vision. Where are you going? What are you doing? Find your purpose. That's your meaningful mission. Why? Why you do what you do. Build your skills, be proactive, take the necessary steps to help you get there. Leave the door open and always, always believe in yourself. Success is not a straight line. You will have a lot of roadblocks along the way. What's going to define your success is the way that you react and the character that you build in difficult times. I love a phrase that says, every life has a purpose. Share your story and you may help someone find their own. I hope that my story helped you understand that it's okay to take different paths. Be bold, take risk, embrace your uniqueness, explore different opportunities, be open, and remember that your identity is your superpower. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks, Yaítza. Thanks, Stephen. And I really appreciate you sharing your perspective. And what you just said, it remind me the quote from my personal hero and idol, Dr. Jane Goodall. She said, every individual matters, every individual has a role to play, and every individual makes a difference. So it's up to us to find the role that we want to play and how it's really ties to the mission of Climatematch Academy. And also, we also want to acknowledge the grant support from NASA to make it happen this year as well. So the Transform to Open Science has been providing some funding for supporting this year's summer virtual school. All right, and I think we're going to move on to some moderated Q&A first. That we have some prepared questions, and I think the first question both Stephen and Yaítza mentioned in their opening remarks. So is that what motivated you to pursue your current career pathways, and are there any of those pivotal moments or points during your career pathways that change your perspective on your career? So maybe we start with Yaítza and then Stephen.
Yeah, absolutely. What motivated me? So I mentioned that I'm from Puerto Rico, the Caribbean, and we are just right there in the middle highway of hurricanes. They impact the island like every season. So I grew up with that, like experiencing on the ground what is to be survive hurricane activity. But as I mentioned before, I studied in physics. So my passion was the stars, astronomy, all of that. But when I started doing research in physics, I realized that I really wanted to serve my community, to help my community. So it was that passion for serving others and helping society that moved me to earth science and atmospheric science and understand weather and climate to help my people because I grew up seeing the effects of weather and climate. So that was my biggest motivation. It was that serving others and help others. I call it science with purpose. It's just like doing science, my fascination for science and math, applying that to serving others. That's science with purpose.
Thanks, Yaítza. How about you, Stephen?
Well, first of all, I want to say thanks to you. So that was a very nice talk. I think I know some of your colleagues, Lawrence Friedel and Karen Robinson and Karen Saint-Germain.
Yes.
There's some people, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Douglas, what you said, about 10 years ago, I had the chance to meet two people. One of them was the former president of the United States, and the other one was Jane Goodall. And I chose to meet Jane Goodall. And I spent 30 minutes talking to Jane Goodall, and she was amazing. While everyone else was queuing to talk to Clinton, and they got to shake his hand for like 3 minutes. I got 30 minutes with Jane Goodall. So I think that's a lesson as well, on how to choose your priorities. I started in oil and gas in my first job, and I saw firsthand the impact that this was having on the environment, and that kind of made me work more in sort of geography and environment. But as my career progressed, I saw that very few people understand the sort of the value of earth sciences or of geospatial data and information. So I pivoted probably halfway through my career more into trying to do, I guess, what would be called today science communication. So I moved into that arena, and I like what I'm probably butchering your name, Yaítza. I don't know how to say it properly, but I like what Yaítza was saying, because at the time when I bought a company, I did a management buyout, and I bought a company that had about 120 people in it. At that time, I had a 7-month-old puppy, I had a 9-month-old son, and my wife was diagnosed with cancer. So I had a really pretty amazingly tough time. And what that taught me was, you have all these things going on in your life, but people on the outside have no idea. So you have to be very resilient in different ways. And my wife had cancer for about 5 years. She's cancer-free now, and my son is now 19, and he now moved to the little village I'm from in Scotland. He's moved there, and he lives close to my parents, which is fantastic. But I think what happens is your career comes. I'm in my 3rd decade of my career, despite my young looks. I've been working for 30 years. And so I think what happens is your career comes in tranches, or it comes in certain parts. And so, like Yaítza was saying, these things happen to you along the way, and it's how you respond, which is really important. So the motivation sometimes is things you learn, but sometimes it's things that happen to you and you have no choice. So it's maybe less motivation and more, you know, things that are forced upon you, I guess. Does that answer the question?
I think that's perfect. And thanks for sharing your personal stories, both Yaítza and Stephen. And so the next question that we had for both of you is that, what do you think are the most important skills that you think students should like develop during their current career stage, in the early stage, or when they are transitioning into a new career stage for climate related fields? So try not to say 10 of them, but try to pick one or two that you think is the most important ones.
Skills.
Yeah.
Can I start?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so skills. And you're gonna be shocked by my answer. I'm not gonna mention technical skills. I'm not gonna mention all the skills that we know that to be successful in the field of climate change, you need it to succeed, technical skills, etc. But what I'm gonna mention is emotional intelligence. Be very aware, self-aware of how you're doing emotionally, because that's gonna give you the other skills that you need to be successful in this career. As I mentioned, changes are gonna come continuously. But if you work with your emotional intelligence, that self-awareness, that self-discipline, consistency is gonna come, and then you can create like a resilient way of reacting to different circumstances. So that's gonna help you in your career. So I know that we have a lot of engineers, scientists, climate scientists here. The technical aspect of it is really important, but equally important is developing your emotional intelligence skills.
Thanks, Yaítza. Stephen?
Yeah, that's nice. I think I'll complement that by adding maybe two areas. One for me is what would probably be called systems thinking today. So everything's kind of connected. And so if you're like, you know, if you want to think about connectivity or interconnectivity across systems, if you're looking at forestry, assess the impacts on biodiversity. If you're looking at water, assess the impacts on agriculture and food system. If you're looking at wetlands, look at the urban impacts, etc., etc. I think it's increasingly important to understand Earth systems models, and according to the US Department of Energy, it's useful to first understand global climate models. So I think a lot of the people on this call should be well placed to learn that kind of approach. I think it's also obviously important to know and understand the tools required for the job. So I know a large number of people have been learning Python and R over the last 5 to 10 years. And now for me, it would seem that figuring out how to use large language models, or LLMs, as part of an approach to incorporating AI into your work will be similarly important. I think one of the things that people maybe don't think about or don't know about is the importance of the prompt when you're using these new LLMs. We've been kind of raised to, or if you're in the kind of the Google search era, you try and put as short a description as possible to search. With LLMs, it's the opposite. You put as much information as you can into the prompt. So if you're trying to search for something in, for example, ChatGPT or Llama or Bard, you need to give lots of context and lots of description. So it's kind of counterintuitive for many of us who've grown used to writing things short and trying to get a quick response. You now have to give a very detailed and good explanation of what that means and how, you know, how it fits, what your question actually is. So those are the two areas for me, kind of interconnectivity and that systems thinking, and then think about how do you take what's available now through artificial intelligence, through neural networks, neuro-linguistic programming, all of these kind of things, natural language processing, and put those things together as part of your kind of your learning and your work activity.
Excellent. Thanks, Stephen. I think both you and Yaítza covered from emotional intelligence and the system thinking, as well as the emerging technologies that can really change how we work in the future. And so with that, I'm going to turn it to Rocio, because it has been monitoring the Q&A, and some question nicely fits into this follow-up question.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your answers. You're already inspiring so many, and they're sharing that with us. I will read a little bit about that in a second. But one question that someone was asking was if you have any advice for people who are trying to transition out of academia into jobs like the public sector, NGOs, private companies. Do you have any specific wisdom in that transition?
I do. I mean, like I said, I've been mentoring young professionals, just like Yaítza, many Latin American young women, women from Africa, women from Asia, and I think I see a lot of. I don't know if Yaítza touched on it. Maybe you did. You sort of maybe didn't use the term, but you sort of touched on it. Believe in yourself, and I hear a lot about imposter syndrome. And what I find is a lot of people coming from academia are intelligent. They're super intelligent. They're very applied. You know, they've got great skills, but they don't feel when they move into the private sector, they have this kind of nervousness, or they don't think they're going to, you know, be able to keep up. And I find it's quite the opposite. Quite often, they're much better than the people that they're coming in to work with. And so I think it's having that confidence in yourself. But it's also thinking about the way things operate, because I'm a visiting professor. I had been for the last 8 years, and academia moves very slowly. It's all about papers. It's all about research. It's all about, you know, getting those scores. In the private sector, it's the complete opposite. The scores are basically if you can sell or if you can influence the direction of your company so that people buy stuff from your company. So the influence model, I'd say, is very different. Think about that, how you're going to influence, and then think about what is it you want out of the job. You know, when they are very, very different jobs. So when you're moving from academia into the private sector, just think about the pace of change and what you want to get back out of that move. Because sometimes people move and they're like, oh, I don't like this at all, and they want to move back. You know, or other people move. There's Yaítza, you might know the name of the company. I can't remember them. It's Beth something. They do flood modeling, and they work really closely with NASA, and they use open models, and it's like cloud to street or street flooding or something. And,
yeah.
and they were in academia, and they're fantastic, and they are the perfect example of me of moving from academia into a private company. And I think they just raised like $10 million or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know the company that you're talking about. And I want to add to that, that the key here is while you are in academia, you need to open your possibilities. Oftentimes we see in academia silos, people working in silos, just in one specific area. This is my field. No, so when you're academia, something that is going to help you is understand the value of the interdisciplinary learning and collaborating and networking with other fields. That's going to prepare you for the industry and the private sector, because you're going to see others' perspectives. And I think that's very important when you are in academia, taking like getting out of the silos and starting interacting and participating in different events from different industries, nonprofit organizations. And that way you're going to have a sense of how the other groups operate. So I think that's very important, being open to understand how the other fields operate through many, many network activities and collaborations across the field.
Love that. Douglas, there are a couple, they're piling up the questions here. So let me just say that I have at least a couple for Yaítza and a couple for Stephen. Yaítza, since you just went, I would like to ask the first question just to start getting this out of the way. This is also a comment that's very inspiring. And this person says that you are very inspiring. Sometimes she thinks of, I'm assuming they think of giving up to land and GIS job, but your experience as a Latina motivates them to keep them going. So the question is, and I'm putting it in the chat as well, how do you go into Earth observation jobs without having a degree in that? And this person is asking because they have a very specific master's in engineering, water resources, but not in remote sensing or GIS, and that makes it difficult. So what would you suggest?
Don't limit yourself to a degree of what it says in your specific field. Open yourself to other opportunities. So I think the first thing is understand that you have a technical scientific background, and that's going to help you in any area that you decide to go. So don't limit yourself, because we in this field, it's not only remote sensing, it's not GIS, only GIS. There's many areas in which you can bring your uniqueness perspective and contribute. So don't limit yourself to just one particular area. You have the technical background, which that's the important part. And I encourage you to participate in different, like, for example, nowadays we have multiple hackathons, we have multiple competitions, we have multiple internship opportunities or other opportunities that are going to bring you more experience in the field of GIS or remote sensing, but don't limit yourself. So you need to present yourself as an earth scientist. And with that, it comes like many different ways that you can work eventually in the field.
Love it. Thank you so much, Yaítza. Sorry, Douglas, it feels like I'm taking the mic from you so much.
I've put a comment in there as well, because I work with a lot of people who are water engineers or hydrologists or who've come. So I've put a couple of things in the chat where you can plug into those communities and you can work with them, like Yaítza says, without necessarily being an EO scientist or a remote sensing specialist.
And sorry, I have an extra comment. For example, my degree is in atmosphere physics when I graduated. And I just end up working for the Department of Defense doing atmospheric transfer and dispersion model for nuclear stuff, radiological stuff, chemical, all the stuff that I have no idea before. But I managed to learn and get trained because my technical skills. So that doesn't matter that I didn't have like a specific degree in that area.
And I would second that, because my first degree was languages. So I transferred from languages to computing. So I completely agree.
Mm-hmm.
This is great. This is also relating to some other questions that are somewhat broad, but then also very specific of degrees. And I feel that the general undertone is always encouraging. Stephen, I'm going to put this question here. Also comes from someone who says, lots of love from Glasgow. And a bunch of questions all in one. I'm going to put them in the chat. And they're all mostly about entrepreneurship. So how do you make the jump from being an employee to run your own business? Did you have to do a lot of upskilling? Did you struggle in the beginning? So maybe a little bit more about your entrepreneurship journey, and how do you know when you're ready? That's the general question in terms of that.
Yeah, I think there's two or three times when you know you're ready. One is if you're getting really frustrated with your boss and you need to do something different. The second is if you feel that all the things you're seeing are not meeting some of the requirements you know are there, then you know there's a gap, and you know that you have some skills and experience that can fill that gap. I think for me, I grew up in a family business, so I was the last in line of a. This is quite ironic, right? That we're on a climate call. Our family business was coal, you know, the black stuff. we sold coal. And here's me telling people, you know, don't burn fossil fuels. But it was a 100-year-old business, and I was the last person in the business, and I was the first person in the family to go to university from this tiny little village in Scotland. So I didn't take on the business, but what I did was, as a teenager, I worked in the business, and I learned about dealing with customers. I learned about cash flow. I learned about, you know, just basic, I think emotional intelligence is what Yaítza was talking about. And I learned that at a very young age. And so if you feel you have those kind of attributes and you enjoy working with people, then what I'd say is you have to get the customers before you have the business. Never start a business without customers. So I would go to people you trust, people you see have a problem, people, you know, where there's big opportunities like NASA, you know, these kind of organizations, and say, look, if I were to start a company and it was going to do this, would you pay for my services? And then if they say yes, you say, okay, how much would you pay? And then you start to, you know, engage them, and eventually you say, okay, I now have a company, please pay for my services. And so I started my business, this business, in April. And I've now billed in the first 4 months more money than I made in the entire year working for the UN as a diplomat. So you have to plan ahead, and you have to think about it. And in fact, I'm taking the whole of this month off. I'm not bringing any money in this month because I just decided I didn't want to work this month. So I'm just speaking to people and having fun, doing some mentoring and stuff. But you need to plan ahead. You really need to plan ahead. That's the key. And in sales terms, we would call it sandbagging. So sandbagging is where you're planning your sales ahead. So you will always see, someone might say to you, how many sales do you have for the month? And you might say 50,000, but actually you've got 100,000 because you're keeping 50,000 back. So you always have a little bit of extra, a little bit of buffer. So like Yaítza said, if COVID comes and you're without a job, you have that money there to support you through the tough times.
Right. I think I'm jumping with some follow-up questions about entrepreneurship, and also somebody's asking about funding. So that may lead well into Yaítza to fill in some of this informations there. So the question is that, what do you think are the biggest challenges facing young entrepreneurs in the field right now? And are there any funding opportunities that the startups in this field? So I'm also going to post that in the chat, so you can take a look. I'm not sure if maybe Stephen, you want to take it first, like crack on it, and then Yaítza can follow up if possible.
You okay with that, Yaítza? So I think there are multiple different ways of breaking this down. There are things like NASA Roses, which Yaítza can explain. In Europe, there's Horizon 2020. In Asia, through the Asia Development Bank and others, there are different funds available for entrepreneurs. I think if you say climate, green transition, or artificial intelligence, you'll get money. And you're doing something wrong if you don't, right? This is my experience. I had lunch today with a startup who's working, they have a database for Latin America of all the mining licenses that are being provided. And they're looking at mining from a green transition perspective. So they're looking at moving from oil and gas into mineral mining and how that, you know, works with EVs and various other things. And so I think if you look at the way the funding is coming, it's coming on these big topics where, to be honest, a lot of the VCs and the funders have no idea. They just know the buzzwords, and they can see that it's going to be a big impact for millions and millions of people, and they're taking a gamble and investing in these areas. So it's crazy how many people are investing in AI, and it's, you know, there was I don't know if the people who are thinking of becoming entrepreneurs have heard of SPACs, special purpose acquisition companies. Last year in Earth observations, there were a number of SPACs and there were billions of dollars raised, but it was raised with false expectations and false figures. So I would say just be cautiously optimistic about the figures that you put on. And if you can grow your company through bootstrapping or through cash flow to the point where you have a product and a service and you're ready to go, that and look for the funds. I wouldn't look for funds early on because you're going to dilute your ownership in your stock holding. I would wait until you're really at the point where you think you're ready to go and you've done a lot of hard work and you've had a lot of sleepless nights, and then go and get the money. But there is tons of money available. And I'm happy if people want to contact me outside of this to chat through some of the ideas.
Thanks, Stephen. Yaítza?
Yes, as you know, NASA is leading the nation of like this journey of discovery, right? So we have multiple opportunities in terms of fundings. We have the famous ROSA solicitation, because the ROSA solicitation is research opportunities for space and science in NASA. And this covers the whole spectrum of NASA science and research, but we also have different solicitations, awards, prizes, challenges related, for example, with the open source science initiative that is more for the international community and is including also the private sector. So there's plenty opportunities across NASA science, the different solicitations. You can visit the NASA ROSAS solicitation. For example, I have one open right now, is the early career investigator program in earth sciences. Is due August 11th, so the deadline is soon. That's for early career professionals. Once you get your PhD, 6 years into your career, and that's not only for academia, it includes like also nonprofit organizations, private sector. There's some, you need to be affiliated with an US institution. That's one of the rules, but there's plenty opportunities and for that grant, and that's just an example of the grants that we have. For that one, it's 100K per year per 3 years. So it's gonna help you doing your research or your work inside the earth science. So I think there's plenty of opportunities. I encourage you to visit NASA Earth Science division, in which you're gonna like find out all the roles of solicitation that are currently open. I think right now we have 40 something open funding opportunities. Not only the ROSA solicitation, we have internships. NASA have internship for grad student, undergrads and grad students that are every spring, every summer, and every fall. We have around 4,000 openings for internships. So we have also I mentioned before, the Space Apps Challenge. And this year is dedicated to open science. So it's in coordination with the Transform to Open Science mission. So there's plenty of opportunities in terms of funding to help your career like succeed.
Thanks, Stephen, Yaítza. And I'm gonna, Rocio, next question if you want to pull up.
Yes, I was trying to combine a few. So there's a general undertone for this question that I'm going to put in the chat, and is potential career paths to follow to establish oneself in this field. There's one person with a master's degree in mathematics from Ghana, eager to pursue a career in climate modeling with no background that speaks of climate science per se. A person in atmospherics physics who is also very interested in establishing themselves with that as a career progression. A person who asked from the PhD and postdocs in other disciplines who intend to transition into work in climate related fields. And I'm putting all of that in the chat as you wish to answer. Let's go with, I see Yaítza reading the question, and Stephen. Go ahead, Stephen.
I say, yeah, so why don't you start? Because I think you'll be better placed, and then I'll just top off what you say.
Again, climate change is very interdisciplinary. You need even policy people to help us like make the science into practice. So we have people in business that help us understand how the economy is affected by climate change. We have like social people, socioeconomic, social scientists that are helping us understand the human behavior related to climate change. Again, what the climate change is not one single field, it's an interdisciplinary field. And I think it's one of the most complex problems that we are facing nowadays. And for that, we need diversity of thinking. That means different fields. So I encourage you to just, if you want to be in climate, pursue a career in climate change, climate modeling, just like get to it, just go for it, do it, find an opportunity and start experience it, and talk to people that are in the field already. And that mentorship is very important. So talk to people that are in the field. For example, Stephen have a company, talk to Stephen and see, hey, do you have an internship program? Can I listen, collaborate, and build your network, so that no matter your field, you can start interacting with the people that are doing climate change.
Great. So I would say for the person with the master's degree in mathematics, and this is exactly to Yates's point, why not look at something like insurance or reinsurance? There's a huge amount of mathematics, there's a huge amount of modeling. You know, if that's where your strengths would come in strong. I have a friend at NASA who is also an atmospheric scientist called, her name's just got out of my head. Oh my gosh. Anyway, she's Greek and she's an atmospheric scientist, and she's just taken over the greenhouse gas modeling and all of the RJ Cavada, thank you. So RJ, she's just taken over all the greenhouse gas modeling. And I think, again, if you wanted, this is for the atmospheric physics person, if you wanted to work with like UNFCCC or others who are looking at this as a discipline, or even those who are doing the PhD and the postdocs, look at the work of IPCC. There's a lot of scientists who are contributing and who are coming from very many different disciplines and backgrounds who are contributing into the climate field. So I think the problem in some ways is very, very broad, and you have to really think about where do you want to apply yourself, because otherwise you could be spread very thin. But I agree with everything Yates has said. It takes a broad church. It takes everyone contributing to get this done.
Yeah, thanks both Yaítza and Stephen. I think the challenge right now is really the integration. So we have a lot of excellent like domain and discipline specific focused research and the applications about how to integrate them into, going back to what Stephen mentioned early on, the system thinking. It becomes Earth system thinking to address climate challenges. I think it's really important right now. And since both of you mentioned about diversity, not just necessarily in demographics, but also in the disciplines, I would also ask Rocio to introduce GeoLatinas, because GeoLatinas is a great group that has been really focused on inclusion and diversity in the geosciences.
Thank you, Douglas, for the shout out and love to GeoLatinas. GeoLatinas is an international organization. For those of you who haven't heard of us, we co-founded this organization in 2018, and we've been together both as a community as well as an organization. And so the organization has a premise to support, inspire, empower Latinas in earth and planetary sciences. But we really want to include and welcome and include everyone who needs that space. So even if you're not a Latina in geo or planetary, we actually have a lot of members who are not describing with those qualifiers. And it's a space for you to find maybe community, to find inspiration, to learn together, as well as to share as much as you want and can. So I'm gonna add some links. I'm actually keeping a running list of links from the panelists, as well as resources I haven't put in the chat, and just kind of like to put them out towards the end of and I'm probably just put it a few times. And I will include the GeoLatinas join and the website if you want to check us out. We are everywhere. LinkedIn, Twitter, or X, or whatever the name is, as Steven said. We're not on Threads yet because, you know, we have to go slow with that one. But everywhere else, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram or Telegraph, I don't even know the name, TikTok, and all the platforms. So join us, find a community. We're there to support each other. And oh, I would really like to know GeoLatina. Oh, cool. Yes, let's connect, Steven. I know I connected with you via Twitter and then I left. Sorry.
Well, thanks. And I think we have about like 7 minutes left. I'm gonna go back to the earlier question that I have left as prepared, that is for the panelists and before we close things out. And unfortunately, we may not be able to get to all the questions that people ask, but Stephen already offered to connect with people on LinkedIn. Make sure you say you learned about the excellent work that Stephen does through Climatematch, so he can probably prioritize the connection with you. And I'm sure Yaítza would be happy to connect with people who want to have follow-up conversation as well. So the last question that we have prepared for the panel is that what excites you the most about the development in terms of career towards climate-related fields, and some departing wisdoms that you want to share with the participants today.
What excites me the most? I have a dream, and my dream is to see a field of science, technology, engineering, mathematics that it's a reflection of what we see in the world, which is everyone is included. I have a passion and for diversity, equity, inclusion, and for creating science for all and by all. So I think having that passion and finding that meaningful mission of doing science with purpose it gets me excited every day. No matter how hard my work is, how intense it gets, because it's like very intense here at NASA headquarters, managing so many programs at once. That's what makes me wake up every day with this passion to doing science with purpose. So I think that's what excites me the most, like being a contributor of driving change to create a more diverse and equitable scientific workforce.
Excellent. Yeah, it's Stephen, how about you?
I think it's probably three things. One is I've been going to the climate conference of the parties since Paris. And I've seen a shift. It's a shift in terms of the attendees. So there's more civil society, there's more NGOs, there's more businesses, but there's still the scientists and the policymakers all coming together. And I know there's a lot of public discourse that says, you know, it's not working, we need more on loss and damage and other things. But if you look at the progress that has been made over the last 10 years, if you do understand the whole climate world and how it operates, there's been tremendous progress. So that's the first thing for me. I think broader awareness and understanding of the impact of climate with more people, I think that's something that gives me hope. The second thing is I see a lot more people now in the area which is described as spatial finance. So I see Lombard Odier, I see Bloomberg, I see Citibank, all of these starting to use earth sciences and earth systems to make decisions on things like risk exposure, resource stress, you know, these things which again are kind of linked to, or they are linked to climate change and climate action. And so that's good, because I think what a lot of people don't understand is that the capital flows and the trillions of dollars are actually what will change climate change, not really what we present in terms of science. I mean, that's never going to shift the needle. anything that is linked to money and investments and capital flows, that's where the decisions will really make or break climate, I think. So those are the two main things. But the third thing is seeing people like Yaítza and you and Rocio. I'm getting really bad with names here. I'm normally quite good. Your energy and you coming through as the next generation of climate scientists or communicators or policymakers. It's good that there are communities like Climatematch and like GeoLatinas and like NASA Women, and there's all these communities that are coming through and that are really trying hard to make a difference in the face of a lot of adversity, in the face of a lot of fake news, in the face of a lot of misinformation. And people are still going, they're still pushing, and they still believe. And so that gives me a lot of hope for what will happen. I'm hoping to work another 20 years, and that'll take me to 75. But I'm guessing for a lot of you, you've probably got 40 years to work, maybe 30. So, it's a long time. So it's good that you have the energy and you have the vision and you have the enthusiasm and the desire to contribute to, what is, I mean, everyone talks about the future, but if you look at the heat waves, the drought, the flood, it's already happening now. And I think that's what a lot of people miss, is it's not just about our children, it's about what's happening today. And so it's good that we're having this kind of dialogue.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Yaítza. I really appreciate your time, like joining us today. And really also, I have been seeing that Stephen trying to raise the profiles of diverse groups and different communities on social media. So I really appreciate you doing that. And thanks, I think Yaítza just put the LinkedIn and contact information in the chat as well. So with that, I would like to close the panel today, and we will share the recording to those who cannot joining us today. And thank you again, Yaítza and Stephen, and hope to see some of the participants in our last panel at 4:30 Eastern time today. Right.
Thank you.